Judge Prado is a very fine jurist, and he has a heck of a sense of humor too. Just a great guy. And so I met Travis when we had a chance to work together on a rather difficult bankruptcy case where we were both representing clients. That case went on for a long, long time, and when you're in trial with somebody for a 14-day trial on and off over about a year or more, you get to know somebody because you're in the trenches with them. And Travis is a very smart, very resourceful, very fine lawyer who was doing the best job advocating for his client in a room full of lawyers who've been practicing law for 3, 4, 5 times longer than he did. And he more than held his own and did really a great job. Also got to know Travis outside of the courtroom because he does so much in the bar and in the community. Travis has co-chaired the Houston Bar Association's Committee on Minority Opportunities in the Legal Profession. He has had a leadership role at the Texas Minority Council Program. He is the current president of the Houston Bankruptcy Inn of Court. He's won the equivalent of the lawyer's version of Dancing with the Stars. He is, he's just a Renaissance guy and a nice guy and a guy who really cares about this cause. There are a number of people in this town who really do. And when you go to count them on one hand, Travis is on that count. Just a great guy. It's a real pleasure to introduce him here, and you're going to enjoy what he has to say. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everybody, for having me here tonight, and thank you, Nikki and Bruce, for such a warm and generous welcome. For those of you who are wondering, they said that just the way that I wrote it and paid them to say it. I'm very, very flattered to have the opportunity to address you all tonight, and I might be able to do this without the microphone. Can you guys hear me in the back? Okay, I prefer not to use the microphone, so I'm sorry that you wasted some of your resources on getting a microphone this year. So as you all know, I'm Travis Torrence. I'm Vice President of Legal for Jiffy Lube International, and I used to be in bankruptcy. Well, not really in bankruptcy, I just did bankruptcy work. I'm not broke, but if the price of oil remains where it is for much longer, we might have to engage Bruce's services because he is a fine bankruptcy attorney. I mentioned that I did bankruptcy work because a lot of the experiences that I'm going to draw on will come from my experience as a young associate at a large law firm and telling you my tips for success for a young lawyer. But before I get there, let me give you a little bit more detail about myself. I grew up in the suburbs of New Orleans and always knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. And my colleagues at Shell give me a hard time about that, and they say, Travis, there's no law in Louisiana, there's no law in New Orleans, so how do you know you wanted to be a lawyer? The answer to that question is my mom, who was a math teacher. My mom said, Travis, what are you going to major in college once you get there? And I wanted to be a television news anchor. So I said, communication and political science, that sounds good. She said, I'm going to teach you the most important equation that I can teach you as a math teacher. Communication plus political science equals unemployed. So what are we really going to do? So to law school I went. And why bankruptcy law? Because I've been dealing with broke people my entire life. My cousins, my aunts and uncles, my dad asked for money now. If it wasn't that, it was going to be criminal law. Okay? My family could have kept me employed doing that as well. In all seriousness, Bruce said I went to Tulane and then Yale. And started my career working for Judge Prado in San Antonio. And I don't know if there are people from St. Mary's Law School here. Yeah, one or two people. Working in San Antonio for 1 year was more than enough time to live in San Antonio. But thank you for the Alamo City and its hospitality. Working for Judge Prado, on the other hand, was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Then I went to Norton Fulbright, where I joined their bankruptcy and insolvency group and spent about 6.5 years at that firm. Ended up chairing the recruiting committee at the firm and also becoming a founding member of the diversity advisory committee for that firm. While I was at Fulbright, Shell became one of my biggest clients. And so when the woman who used to hire me to do Shell's bankruptcy work across the country got a promotion, they asked me if I would join what we like to refer to as the best corporate legal department in the world. Of course I said yes, started doing Shell's bankruptcy work, and a few months ago, about 6 months ago, got the promotion to being Vice President of Legal for Jiffy Lube. Now I can go on and on and on talking about myself because it's my favorite subject, but you guys didn't come here for that. You came here to learn about my tips for success for young attorneys, and I know that you all had a very robust discussion about some of these tips for success. So hopefully today, while you were at Jackson Walker, so hopefully today what I share with you will bring it all together. My first tip is to use these early years in your career, the infancy of your legal career, to hone your skill, to master the craft and the trade of practicing law. Because I assure you that going to law school and graduating from law school isn't going to prepare you for success as a young lawyer. Passing the bar exam, that's also not going to arm you with what you need to be successful. So focus in these early years on becoming the best legal researcher, the best legal writer that you possibly can become, because there's no substitute for hard work, determination, and diligence in our profession, and there's no substitute for consistently and routinely submitting good legal work product. So devote yourself to attention to detail. Make sure you proofread all of your work. Don't just look for the major structural issues and challenges, but look for the double periods at the end of sentences. Look for the common blue book mistakes when you're proofreading your work, because when I review the work product of young attorneys and I see that it's riddled with those little tiny mistakes, I start to think maybe there's more that's wrong with this that I'm not seeing, and you never want someone to question your legal acumen. I like to think of it in terms of a credibility bank. So every time you turn in a flawless piece of legal work, there's a piggy bank, and it's your credibility bank. You're adding a few dollars into that bank, so when you finally do make a mistake, people think it's an outlier experience because you always do really good work. But everybody's going to tell you, do good work, master your skill, master your craft. Let's talk about what happens when you do make a mistake. And I said when, not if, because eventually you will make a mistake in the practice of law. And I hope that this advice is consistent with what you guys talked about earlier today. Whenever I've made a mistake in the practice of law, I found that it is really, really helpful to tell a supervising attorney immediately. You've got to tell someone. Don't try to hide it. Don't try to hide in your office and hope that your mistake or your error never sees the light of day, because I assure you that it will at some point. And there is nothing that we do in the practice of law that cannot be easily fixed with the filing of a motion, reaching of an agreement with the other side, or altering your overarching strategy. But don't just tell someone about your mistake. Make sure that you bring potential solutions as well. So don't just dump a problem on your supervising attorney's desk, but think of possible solutions. And that's actually how Nikki and I worked through the date confusion with my ability to speak tonight. I'll tell you about a mistake that I made, since Nikki told you about a mistake she made. When I was a young attorney, in one of my first bankruptcy cases that I was the lead associate on, I had to file the proof of claim in our case. For those of you who don't know anything about bankruptcy, proof of claim is the way that you tell the court, the debtor, the major parties in interest, that you are owed money by this debtor and that you expect to collect at least a portion of it. Our client in this case was owed about $250 million, and I needed to file a paper copy of the claim in the bankruptcy court in California by the deadline that was set by the court. Now, I live in Houston. I'd love to go and bring the claim to the court in California myself, but instead I was working through an associate in our Los Angeles office. So a few days before the deadline, I FedExed a copy of our claim to the associate in Los Angeles, and she got busy on the day that the claim was due, but she still sent the claim to the court via a courier. So the courier places the claim in the satchel, gets to the bankruptcy court, delivers other documents, doesn't realize till later that night he didn't drop off our $250 million claim. So I'm the first person that hears about it. I stay up all night and prepare a motion for the court to allow us to file a late claim. I file a draft affidavit from the courier service. I start preparing draft email messages on behalf of the partner who was supervising my work to the client to let them know what happened, to the major parties in interest, as well as to the court and to anybody else. So when the partner got there that next morning, I had to walk into his office and say, hey, this is what happened, and this is how I propose we solve the problem. Because I brought a solution to his office, I did not lose face on my reputation. The client was not upset about it, and it ended up becoming a non-issue in the grand scheme of things in our bankruptcy case. So don't just bring problems when you make a mistake. Tell someone and bring possible solutions as well. Third piece of advice, find activities and outlets outside of the practice of law. For me, for a very long time, I was always in the gym when I wasn't practicing law. You can take a look at me now, you can feel my biceps. I haven't been in the gym in a long time. Instead, I dedicate most of my time to nonprofit organizations and philanthropic causes throughout the city of Houston and sometimes across the state and nationally, because it takes my mind off of the practice of law, but also because I really believe in causes like this and many, many others. Now, you don't have to do community service. You can do sports, you can do other things, but make sure you do something. Other people don't do things just for altruistic reasons. You could be doing it for business development. You can do it for networking, to make friends, but let me suggest another reason. It also helps you to develop skills that you're going to need later on in the practice of law. So your responsibilities will change over time. I'm a litigation orientation. So when I started out, I was doing a lot of research and writing. Then I moved to arguing motions in court. And as you heard from Bruce, my last year at Norton Rose Fulbright, I spent in trial and in depositions. Now, the skills that became really essential for me to be successful as a senior associate, I didn't really learn a lot of those from doing research and writing as a young attorney. It was those nonprofit organizations that gave me an opportunity to hone my public speaking ability, which I'm not showing off tonight because I'm kind of struggling through this, but it helped me with my leadership skills. It helped me with marketing. It helped me with networking. It helped me with writing for different audiences. So get involved in something, and if you're getting involved in meaningful activities, it'll help you to cultivate skills that will be really important down the road when you're practicing law. The next piece of advice might sound crass, but I'm gonna go there anyway, and I'm talking about money. Don't get the golden handcuffs. I had platinum handcuffs when I first started practicing, but you know, I don't purport to know anything about your financial wherewithal, but if you're anything like me, when you start practicing law, you're gonna be making more money than you've ever made before, and just because that's the case doesn't mean that you have to drive up to court in a Benz. Ladies, it doesn't mean that you need to wear Louboutins to your closings. And I know it sounds crazy coming from the guy who's wearing a Hermes belt right now, but avoid the bling is the message here, and take time to adjust to your newfound financial success for a few reasons, but one of them is you might not actually like that high-paying job that you start out in, and you don't want to be chained to a job just because you need that level of income. Also, you might seek out or you might be approached with different opportunities. So there are jobs in federal, state, and local government. There are jobs in nonprofit organizations that are amazing opportunities to get wonderful skills, and some of those jobs will catapult you to a really, really high earning level later. You don't want to have to forego those opportunities, again, because you need to make a certain amount of money. That's all I'm going to say about money because I'm starting to sound like my dad. Actually, he actually asks for money these days. So, I'm almost finished, I promise. Exercise civility in every single thing that you do. Some of you in this room are going to work on litigation where there are millions of dollars at stake. Others of you will work on transactions that have a value of hundreds of millions of dollars. And other people will work on disputes and negotiations that, irrespective of the dollar amount, they're really contentious and really complex. But no matter how contentious, how complex things are, or how much money is at stake, there's never any reason for yelling, screaming, dishonest behavior, or unethical behavior in the practice of law. If you think about it, I'm on the board of directors of the State Bar of Texas. We have nearly 100,000 attorneys in the state. That's not a lot of people. And once you cultivate a reputation for being difficult to work with or being dishonest, it's hard to shake that. And I'm not saying to be a pushover. I'm saying to be professional in your interactions, not only with opposing counsel, but with the non-attorney professionals with whom you deal. The paralegals, the administrative assistants, the court personnel who can make or break your careers. Work with as many different types of senior attorneys as you possibly can as well, and I'll tell you why. So everyone wants to work with that partner or senior associate who is fun to be around, easy to get along with, doesn't mark up your work too much. It's good to work with that person, but work with the person who's also difficult to get along with. Work with the person who's a micromanager. Work with the person who doesn't give you a lot of guidance and advice. Because one day, I might hire you to work on a Jiffy Lube matter, and if you know how to work with a variety of different personalities, you'll do better at navigating the practice of law and dealing with your own clients. Those different personality types are going to be a cross-section of the personalities that you deal with later on, and make some of those people mentors if possible. So mentors, that's the best way of navigating our profession, and unfortunately, all of the studies show that formal mentoring programs are typically unsuccessful. It's those informal mentoring opportunities that you get that will really catapult your career to get advice and to get counsel and to get guidance. The tricky part is finding a mentor. How do you do it? I ask people, hey, would you mind giving me some guidance or advice on it? But a better way to do it is to find out what's important to that person. Be of service to them. Insert yourself in their lives. I'll tell you a quick story before I wrap up. The way that I found my first mentor in a large law firm was I got to work really early in the morning. I just wake up early, I get to work early, and there was always this one partner in the office. The rest of the associates didn't get to work until like 9:30 or 10. So one day he walks into my office and he says, hey Travis, do you know how to use Westlaw? Really? So he asked me to pull a case for him. The next day he asked me to do a little bit of research. The next day I'm writing a brief. And finally, we are working together on all of his cases. And then I'm able to engage him about advice on other issues and other subject matters. That became my first mentor because he wanted to start working at 7 o'clock in the morning and no one else got there until 9:30, and I became his associate. Once you find that person who's good at practice and law, find someone who's good at professional development, find someone who's good at business development, and create your own personal board of directors, people who are going to guide you through the career. Now, I'll close with this. You're going to work on lots of different issues when you're a young attorney. And a lot of it will seem meaningless. A lot of it will seem menial. But I want you to use every single opportunity to find your voice in our profession. You might not be the person who's signing the brief. You might only be writing a little tiny section. But I want you to concentrate on writing it so well that the court can't think of a better way of writing that same passage. You might not be the one negotiating a transaction, but someone's gonna walk into your office and wanna talk about that transaction, or you'll get a call from a young attorney on the other side. Use that opportunity to find your voice and to practice your verbal communication and negotiation skills. You might not be the person who's standing at the podium arguing the appeal, but you're gonna write a memo and someone's gonna ask you a question about it. Use that opportunity to find your voice and to practice your oral advocacy skills, because someday you will be the person who is leading the negotiations. You will be the person who's signing those briefs, and you will be the person who's arguing the motions. And when you're there, it's too late to practice. You're already doing the right things by being here tonight. Continue on down that road so that we can pass this torch of excellence to you, the next generation of lawyers in our noble profession. Thank you so much for having me tonight. It's been great getting to meet you guys, and hopefully I'll get to meet more of you before I fly back to Austin tonight.